What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Shot Tank. I am joined today by JonBoyBeats, and I believe Mike will be coming a little later. TST, I think, is out for the week with some personal stuff, so we'll miss him. How are you doing, John?
God, dude, I'm good. We've got the last games of the game two slates here tonight. So Grizz are holding up to the better without Ja
Yeah,
motto that they've run like weirdly hot on over the last 2 years.
yeah, they really have, and it just speaks to the resiliency and like how deep that team is. It's kind of bonkers. But yeah, thank God, because I still don't think they can pull it off, but I just wanted that to be a series. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that
I mean, we
glad
need
that they're
some
getting
serious.
something.
Right? We've got Kings Warriors, and then after that, I mean, maybe after last night, Suns Clippers. Although like that one's feeling kind of weird. That one's feeling like it might just be a bunch of blowouts. Like I don't know. It feels like one team
Cavs Knicks
blowout.
is I
Oh yeah,
feel like a
Cavs
good one
Knicks
too.
was good. It was good to see the Cavs dominate yesterday and kind of get back into it.
Yeah,
And it feels like when they go back to the Garden, like those are going to be some close games. So yeah, I think Cavs Knicks should be good. I want this Lakers Grizzlies series to be pretty good, and then obviously Kings Warriors is kind of cream of the crop right now. But
I mean
everything
it's
else kind of fizzled out a little bit.
Kings Warriors. Those have been two of the best games I've watched. Which is funny that you have some people saying that the reffing is like super skewed one way, because I feel like there's a reason the games have been so good and people have been really enjoying them. Even like me, I'm not really rooting for either team,
Yeah.
but I mean the Kings are in a position where they have the opportunity to maybe even sweep, and so like I mean, I still think
Yeah.
those, if they do pull it off, those two games would be close. But that series, which I originally thought would go to seven, who knows what happens with that one? So I
Yeah, I
think
mean, I feel like it's more likely to be 2-2 than it is going to be a sweep. Like
I agree.
I although, all the numbers would say differently, right? Kings are the best road team in the West this year. Always play well on the road, play better defense on the road. But they have stepped up defense pretty nicely here in the playoffs. I think Mike Brown's been doing a pretty good job coaching that up, getting Davion out there and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think gun to my head, I feel like Warriors probably win game three, and I kind of feel like the Kings are going to steal game four and
That's
head
how
back
I feel.
to I always say Arco in my head, but head back to the Golden One Center with a 3-1 lead. But I think it could easily be 2-2 heading back to Sacramento, and then I'd be, back to being pretty nervous as a Kings fan. So I'm definitely rooting for the 3-1 and bringing up Rabbit's comment about, fully on the Kings bandwagon. I feel like generally speaking, that's what most people who aren't fans of either team are going to be jumping onto the Kings bandwagon. So that's always fun to get a little extra push from the Twitter fans and stuff like that when it's the team that you like to root for.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think I I personally, just as someone who's not a Kings fan or a Warriors fan, am really hoping that the Warriors do win game three. Even if the Kings win game four, like
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
love this to be like a series, because those first two games were so good, and it would
Yeah.
just be a shame for it to kind of end a little early because of the suspension, which obviously like completely deserved, but it still doesn't like take away from the fact that it kind of uh could potentially ruin this from just being like an incredible series.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Draymond, I guess, so that was like third quarter, right? When he got the boot?
It might even been fourth quarter.
Early fourth. I forget exactly when it
Early
was,
fourth
but
or late third, something like that.
I mean, Draymond had a decent game one. He was kind of doing everything, had a lot of assists, a lot of ball movement. He wasn't really super impactful in game two, although honestly, not many of the Warriors were. I mean, the Kings kind of put the clamps down on them in game two, and they were running a lot of. Well, the thing with the Kings is they have a better chance against teams that don't have any interior presence, right? Like nobody on the Warriors is a a slasher or like a somebody that's going to be driving and finishing at the rim, right? Like
Yeah.
if Curry's driving, he's probably doing a floater or and like Clay's not a driver. Like Wiggins is maybe like the closest thing to it, and Looney isn't a huge offensive threat on the inside. So
Looney's there for boards.
yeah, and so that's like the exact kind of team that like the Kings would play well against. The kind of team that they don't play well against is a team like maybe the Lakers or the Grizzlies, who they're going to
Yeah.
face next round if they win. So definitely worried about that a little bit. But I mean, my family's still up in Sacramento. I got a bunch of friends up there, and everybody's been loving the vibe up there. My sister can see the beam from her apartment, so it's a good
Oh
time in Sacktown right now.
yeah. Dude, I'm headed up to Sacramento tomorrow, so I'm
Nice.
hyped. Yeah, I'll be there for I think at least a week. So I'm hoping to go to at least like one of the viewing, like the away games where they watch
Yeah.
the game in the stadium. I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, dude, I think it is funny, and we'll move on from this because I mean I feel like I could talk about this whole like situation all day. But I do think it is funny that the Warriors reportedly they were aiming for like 2 weeks before the season ended. They're like playing the Kings as our
I know.
goal because we like smell blood in the water. Um, and they are getting exactly what they wished for, and they haven't been able to handle it. And it's not like the Warriors are just like shooting the lights out of the building either. Like they're shooting below their like typical like clip, and they are still pulling off these W's. So
Yeah.
they've been really good games to watch.
Yeah, I think just doing a quick overview of the series, right? We've got, it feels like Celtics, Hawks, and Sixers Nets are probably both over. Maybe those gentlemen sweep, but it doesn't really feel like there's much of a chance for those going anything past 5 games.
Yeah.
Um,
And we kind of knew
and
that going
then
into.
yeah, we kind of thought that was going to happen, right? And then the Clippers, Suns, right? Man, the first half last night was looking nervous if you're a Suns fan. Like those guys look like those are first, time playing basketball together, which it's not that far from it. I think it's only their 10th game. So yeah, a little bit sketchy there. But
Dude,
they ended up
I
getting it
was
together.
praying that Scott Foster would go beast mode in the fourth and just really take home another W to put on the mantle. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, he couldn't get it done.
I
But
know. I'm kind of glad that that's over and it's not like a 14-game win streak now. It's like I bet both guys like kind of are pretty annoyed at it. Like they obviously
oh
see
yeah,
it on like Twitter and shit. They're just like, fuck.
yeah. I
And
think there's
then
already memes about Scott Foster will be like reffing Game 3 for the Warriors, so that way, hopefully, he can help them bring them back. And I'm just like, jeez.
yeah, seriously. And then the games tonight, right? So Memphis Lakers. I think Memphis Lakers has potential to be a 6 or 7 game series and have some good games in there. And then Bucks Miami. I mean, shit. If I would like to think that having a couple days to prep, knowing Giannis isn't going to play, although he had some weird doubtful Q tag stuff like that. I would like
Mhm.
to think the Bucks are still going to be able to pull out a victory tonight. I mean, they've been able to do it without Giannis at times this year, and theoretically they should still be able to beat the Heat. But playoff Jimmy is a different story. So if the Bucks go down 2-0, man, that is a very interesting series. And
Yeah,
I mean, that
2-0
is
at
one where
home. They go down
yeah, 2-0 at
2-0
home.
going to Miami. Well, and
Yeah, not that Miami's the greatest home environment ever, but
no, definitely not. But I think the one thing that's crazy is so I was curious because I was like, dude, the Heat are objectively a bad team. Like we all know this. But they are also at the same time a team that seems to always overachieve what they look like on paper.
yeah,
Because you have the King, you have the Heat, like higher ups who will brag, oh, we have 7 undrafted players on the roster, and it's like, well, I don't know if that's a good thing. Like it's
yeah,
impressive that you do that, but that's not like a good thing in terms of trying to build a championship team around someone like Jimmy.
yeah,
But the I think the 3 or 4 times the Heat played the Bucks in the regular season, I believe the times that Giannis missed, the Heat won both of those games.
Yeah.
And so as at least this season, and someone in the chat check me if I'm wrong, but I believe at least in the season, the Heat have not lost to the Bucks when Giannis doesn't play. So that could make things interesting with this game too, because it's like holy cow! Like if this if that remains true and the Heat win this game, like you said, like that would be kind of bonkers, leaving like not only losing home court advantage, but just being in like a real deep hole that like
Yeah.
and not knowing if Giannis is coming back for game 3. I would think so, considering he was all the way to questionable before they ruled him out. So
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I mean, the Bucks are notorious for having a funky injury reporting, and on the DFS streets and the underdog streets, we've been kind of finding some angles on that a lot of this year, just assuming Q tag guys are in and assuming P tag guys are out and stuff like that. But yeah, I was kind of when he was doubtful to questionable, I kind of thought he was going to play for sure. But I guess
yeah,
that shows
same.
it's a little bit more serious because Giannis. I mean, what, 2 years ago he freaking broke his knee basically and like played 2 games later or something. So
Yeah,
he's just
absolutely.
as they say, he's built different. But yeah, hopefully they can get it back to 1-1 and then Nugs Wolves tonight. I mean, I feel like the Wolves have a chance to make it a series. They need Cat to like not guard Jokic. Probably they need Cat to be able to
They
like
need
go do some
Cat to
stuff on offense.
Yeah, they need Cat to stop trying to play defense because he's not particularly good
Yeah,
at it, and like not get in foul trouble. Because when he gets in foul trouble, his whole mentality changes. Like
yeah,
he cannot attack with that aggression and like put up the numbers that they desperately need. If they even want to try and take one game in the series, once again, I mean, I think it's gonna be a sweeper and gentleman's sweep. I don't think the the uh the Wolves
is
pose
it
any
true
like
that
credible
yeah,
threat.
that is what Ryan said true that Prince is starting over not Kyle Anderson?
Yeah, it looks like it. Poker Pro Eric confirming one of the most reliable sources in NBA in the NBA space.
So,
Um,
I feel like that's kind of not the greatest move. So I was thinking that they were gonna go put Slow-Mo starting and put him on Jokic because I mean, he's done it before. Give Cat the ability to focus on offense a little bit more, and then have Gobert do whatever he does. But I guess they're keeping Slow-Mo off the bench, so
yeah,
we'll see.
that's
We'll see. That could be good. I guess it could be bad. I don't know. I feel like they need to get Cat off Jokic.
yeah, no,
So whatever.
100% because he's gonna foul him, and it's just like, dude, give Cat just tell Cat needs to. I mean, that's why they made that insanely terrible trade for Rudy Gobert, is because they're like, okay, if Cat does not have to feel like all the defense is right on his shoulders, he can focus on what he's good at and what put him as like a all-star last year. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see. I would love for any of these to be like legitimate series because it's just more basketball and more like meaningful basketball. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm I'm super excited to see like how the second rounds goes because obviously like that's when things are gonna get really crazy, and then just yeah, hopefully we don't have any injuries between then and the finals.
I know, man. I know. It seems like I was kind of hoping both Ja and Giannis would play tonight, and we could kind of skip the injury scare. But with both of those guys out now, then it's starting to get a little bit nervous. But hopefully they're back for Game 3, and it's just a little blip in the radar. AD ended up being healthy. Everything else
Yeah.
is going to plan. So all right, you want us to should we talk some top shots? Should we talk some redemptions, some
Yeah.
champions path?
Yes, sir.
So we are I think a good place to start is just talking through what the plan is here for the next week, right? I mean, it's and I've been posting quite a bit in the Discord every morning trying to give a little lay of the land of where we're at right now. And one of the things that I keep just circling back to is just, it's a bummer because this first round is really when I thought a lot of the action was going to happen, right? And like,
Yeah.
um, so maybe there's right out of the gates, obviously I don't even know if the supply was bad, but the price point was definitely bad. And maybe you could argue that there is, a supply problem there. But
I
I
I
mean,
I think the supply is like, if anything, it was slightly too low. I would say it was fine, but I feel like you could make a argument that was too low as opposed to too high. Like, I think they did do a good
yeah,
job with the supply, but to your point, the problem is all this supply that would work perfectly right now with like the user base and all that is locked behind a gate where the price is too high for like to make sense for people to fire off.
right, right. And I think, what in a perfect world, what would have happened was most of the supply would have been out by, call it yesterday, maybe at the latest, or, maybe we get it to at least like, I don't know, 80% or 85% or 90% or something, and the rest trickles out this week somehow. But, and then what that would allowed for is, some of these playoff games to kind of matter a little bit in the market. And there's still been some movement. Like we saw the Warriors prices go down and the Kings prices move up after game 2 when the Kings jump out to 2-0.
Yeah, De'Aaron
You
Fox
know,
had a nice little bump.
yeah. And when Giannis got hurt and the Bucks lost game 1, the Celtics prices, jumped up, Bucks fell down, stuff like that. And then even I'm looking even at last night, basically, Suns started moving up a little bit again. So, there's been a little bit of that. But I think the Curry redemptions are down bad for sure. He's down to $8.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, I think there's been some price movement, but I think the majority of people are trying to be like, okay, well, there's only 50% of the supply out right now, or what are they doing with these packs, or what's going on, right? That's like where most of the talk has been, and less so has been in some of the price movement, and so I think maybe that's a first place to start, and for all and for all intents and purposes, we tried our best to try to get some answers today, and there wasn't a whole lot going on from the inside from Dapper and Top Shot on any ideas or letting anybody know what's going on. So
Well, let's talk about that real quick because I'm curious what you think, and this is something we haven't talked about a lot, like privately. So I think this will really be interesting to discuss. But why? So I assume that the reason Top Shot didn't have a plan is because they were like, oh, these packs are going to sell out. Like the math in terms of uh, like the EV as well as the circulation and the supply that we've created, like this all makes a lot of sense. So this stuff's going to sell out. So we don't need to have any contingency plans. Um, so with that being said, I mean, that seems to kind of be the answer. Like how do you think how do you think Top Shot gets out of this pickle? Do you think it makes sense for them to reprice packs, to start like trying to do giveaways, to retroactively do a leaderboard drop like Ryan was saying? And I know you talked a bunch about this in your threads too.
yeah, I mean it is a pickle for sure. They definitely have gotten themselves into a little bit of pickle, and I think um the way that I phrased my thread yesterday was more in the world of like a lot of this stuff would have been pre-planned and pre-announced, right? So like
Yeah.
the different I brought up the ideas of team leaderboard airdrops at the beginning, uh do some intentional challenge type stuff, then sell packs for a little bit cheaper, then do some sort of like redemption kind of thing, do a burning for old playoff moments to get like just a bunch of different things that could kind of get some momentum and hype going, right?
And
Instead of
kind of
just like
flex all the tools that they've built.
exactly.
Yeah.
like none of it was brand new stuff. Like none of it was new technology. It was like just utilize what you have. And like that's the part that I get frustrated with is like, there's so many different times on the platform where people are feeling like they're getting pulled in different directions to like chase different things or do different things because it might be good for their collection or might be good for rewards or whatever. And like this is just a really good way of like being like, hey, I know we've been kind of doing a lot, spreading ourselves pretty thin. We're gonna kind of show you guys that we have our shit together a little bit, and like we're gonna utilize all these different things to help support this campaign, and it's going to really build some hype, build some momentum. Some people are going to get stuff for free because they're on leaderboards. Some people are going to be able to burn some of their old stuff to do things. People are going to buy it if they want because it's an exciting thing. If you buy enough or if you have enough, you're going to get some airdrops because we appreciate your support. Like all these things.
Yeah.
And the people that are doing challenges, feel free to keep doing that. So I think that would have been, obviously a much better approach. And obviously that wasn't the plan internally. And so now they're at a point where they've kind of boxed themselves in because in the blogs and the announcements and stuff, they kind of say, hey, we're people are kind of getting hung up on like they said they weren't going to be in challenges and stuff, which whatever, I get that. But like they've kind of gotten themselves to a point where they either need to like just keep the packs open and then like close them and stop it, or they need to announce like tomorrow, like, hey, here is our plan to get the rest of these things out before the first series is over. And it's going to include more challenges, it's going to include some free airdrops, whatever. But like every day that like waits is kind of worse, right? And the
Yeah.
reaction is going to be worse because, the the frustrating little reply on Twitter yesterday that I retweeted this morning saying this is super important to get clarity on was, the Top Shot Twitter
Oh,
account. PPE called it out today on Twitter. That everything's going to be official. That like the made fucking Cobbs. That was like one of the more important things they do is like get a reply from their Twitter. So little throwback to 6 or 8 months ago, but their Twitter said we're not going to sell. Actually, let me find. I want to read the verbiage exactly how it is because it was a little bit of a unique verbiage, and I feel like it can go in a couple different ways. So they basically said, "No, we do not intend on selling playoff packs containing redemptions after a first round series concludes." Right. So, in my opinion, that means you know the Sixers could sweep as early as Saturday morning. Like Saturday by noon Pacific time, the Sixers could win 4-0. And if not them, then maybe the Celtics sweep Sunday afternoon. Technically, the Kings have some potential for that too, although we just talked, we don't really think that's going to happen. And depending how tonight's games goes and game 3 goes, I mean, the Nuggets are in that realm too on Sunday
yeah.
if they perform like they did in game 1. So there's probably a pretty good chance that a series closes out this weekend. And so the way that the announcement reads to me is as soon as any series is over, we're not selling packs, right? Because then you have the
Correct.
chance of getting a moment that's dead or whatever. And so then that means that they probably need to stop selling packs by Friday, unless they're going to like pull it down like over the weekend or something like that. And then there's maybe another angle where it's like, okay, well, they're not going to sell packs after the first redemption window because remember the way that the redemption window works is they said within 48 to 96 hours of a series ending, the redemption window is going to open, right? And
Yeah.
so, let's say the Sixers close out on Saturday morning. Well, probably like maybe Tuesday is when the redemption window openings, maybe Wednesday, right? And then you're going to have to make some decisions on your Sixers and Heat moments and stuff. And so, yeah, I think that's like the two potentials is like everything's being sold through like Friday and the weekend, or everything's being sold probably through like Tuesday, maybe Wednesday at the latest.
Yeah.
Um,
I think they would be allowed to sell them until that first challenge ends because that way no matter if you bought a pack, no matter what you got, it wouldn't be useless.
yeah,
So it gives them a tiny little bit more time to figure things out, but not much because to your point, like we're in this situation where it's like there's like 4 possible sweeps, and like there's likely going to be at least one. Like I don't see the Hawks winning a game, period. And even then, I don't see the Nets winning a game. I don't really see the Wolves winning a game unless Anthony Edwards drops 50. So it's like one of those teams are bound to sweep, and that just really puts Top Shot in like such a difficult situation because they have such a limited time to figure things out.
And so then basically the options are, you know, continue selling packs, and then whenever
Well,
they
they'll definitely keep
stop,
doing that.
well, yeah, they'll keep doing that. You get that paper.
Yeah.
And whenever they stop, then it's just like, okay, supply is capped, right? We are done. These aren't coming out, whatever. And so if they do that, I mean, it'll be interesting when I run the numbers tomorrow morning, but like, um, when I ran them yesterday, they needed to sell about 18,000 redemptions per day. When I ran it and then yesterday they sold about 19,000. So they were above the goal. And so it's like, okay, maybe it's just a slow trickle and it's going to sell out, right? But then today things came to a screeching halt. Like this morning, the new numbers said they need to do about 17,000 a day, and they've only sold 3,600 as of now. And
Oof.
so yeah, I mean, maybe that doubles overnight. And by the time I run them tomorrow morning, that's bumped up by 2, but still that's going to be, 3 times the 3 times less than what they sold yesterday. And then things have
Yeah.
really kind of come to a halt. And then, now we're kind of getting to that standoff point. And so, yeah, so again, going back to it, the options are keep selling packs until they stop. And then that's what the supply is, or probably announce, something tomorrow. They have to do it tomorrow, I would say, that says,
Mhm.
here's our plan to get everything out by the end of the first series, right? And if they
Yeah.
wait and they just do some hokey pokey shit like on Tuesday, and all of a sudden a bunch are airdropped or a bunch of people get free packs or whatever, that's just going to piss people off. So they have to communicate it early. Otherwise, people are going to go into the weekend and think, hey, maybe these have a chance to be out of 3,000. I'm going to buy a little bit or whatever, right? So
Yeah, that's a good point. Real quick, Borland's asking which pack. Do you have the breakdown of how many packs of each are left?
yeah, so there's 12,000 of the 3-pointers left,
Okay.
actually 13,000, and then there's 64,000 of the dimes packs left. So, I mean, doing all the math on obviously there's 3 in the 3-pointer and 1 in the dimes and all that stuff. So, yeah, only 3,600 redemptions have been sold, not necessarily packs today, obviously.
Got it. So
And then yeah.
here's what I think Top Shot should do. And I mean, you like I said, you kind of already put out a thread. Oh wow, shout out to Consigliere for joining. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Um but I mean, I think so they already added one of the dime packs to the challenge, which I think and that's going to take like 4 to 5,000 off. That's a nice little chunk. I think that leaderboard where they have like the burn leaderboard where if you burn 300 top like TSS, you get a pack. They should also add packs to that,
Yeah.
or even if you want, say, hey, if you burn 500, you get an additional pack, which is one of
Yeah.
these. They need to
Okay,
do
they need that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if things get really desperate, I think you have to airdrop everyone who bought a pack an additional pack for like the purchase. Like, so if you bought 5 packs, you get 5 packs airdrop type of deal, which
Or here's what Ryan said. Candy had a problem. They halved the
exactly
price and airdropped everybody a pack or whatever.
that's exactly what I was thinking of because I bought, I think, 20 packs from Candy, and then they announced that they're having the price. But in order to kind of appease the people who already paid, they're like, hey, we're going to airdrop you. And I think the way it worked is they didn't, I think they took like 40% off the price or something. So if you got airdrop, you got like a little tiny bit of a deal, technically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that would be another mechanism they could do as well. But I think even with like throw in an extra challenge, do that leaderboard burning, like you might be able to get yourself out of this situation
Right. And
pretty
the most
easily.
important part is get yourself out of the situation without pissing too many people off, right? Like,
Yeah,
there's
correct.
plenty of ways they can get themselves out of the situation, but
Yeah.
if they if they don't do it tomorrow, if they don't announce a plan tomorrow, I think then now they're just gonna start pissing people off and turning
Yeah.
people away from the whole playoff deal in general, right? Because, again, let's say the Sixers sweep on Saturday morning and nothing happens. Packs sell tomorrow, packs sell Friday, packs are on sale Saturday morning. Well, all of a sudden the Sixers sweep and people are gonna be like, yo, what the fuck goes on now? Like, does that mean there's only going to be however many of these Embiids, or are they still going to sell some more? Like, and then it gets
Yeah.
into like Monday, Tuesday next week. Maybe a couple series have already ended, and it's like, okay, here's our plan. We're going to airdrop a bunch of shit. And people are like, wait, what the hell? I bought a couple Embiids because I thought he was going to only have 3,000 or something, and then you get people kind of starting to get frustrated. So definitely
Yeah.
think it's important that they communicate that tomorrow, and then I don't know. I think that's just the bummer is like it's they this week shouldn't be about that. Like we shouldn't be talking about that. We should be talking about like strategy of like if teams are good buy lows and stuff like that. But people are just
Yeah.
too gun shy to buy it.
Well, because I was gonna say, I think that's
Well,
the
I want to go
shame.
to what Borland's saying though. He's saying other teams still play. I guess maybe I don't get what that point is. Like,
I think what he's saying is he said it before, he thinks they're gonna stop selling packs after all of round one ends, but there's no way that that's the case because it's like if you bought a pack after the first, let's say the Cavs Knicks game goes to 7 games and then the 76ers sweep. Well, if you bought a pack like after the 76ers challenges ended, but before the Knicks challenges started, and you get a Nets redemption moment, it's literally worthless. You can't turn it in for a moment. You
right,
can't do
right.
anything with it. And that would just not be a good situation. So there's
Yeah,
no
so
way.
they can't keep the packs for sale throughout. I mean, the only
Yeah.
thing they could do, which would just completely make things even more complicated, is as soon as we keep using the Sixers, right? So as soon as the
Yeah.
Sixers window closes, then they could fucking take all the packs down, take out all the Sixers and Nets moments, and then re-put up packs for sale again.
With
Like
just the Sixers in them.
they could ensure that you never get a redemption that's dead. But then that's just even more complicated because now all of a sudden Sixers are out of 3,500, Lakers go to 7 games, they're out of 5,000,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of a shit show, and people are already confused. It's going to be even
Yeah.
more confusing.
So Grote is saying that Jacob, who was on the team whole playback last night, seems very aware of the issues. So hopefully, yeah, that'd be great if they
I hope
announced
so.
something. This, like John said, the sooner the better. But I think to your point, like the thing that really sucks about this is just like all of us were like super excited about this, and I still am. Like I think we all still are like really excited about this whole like Top Shot, like the game theory behind it, and all that stuff. And I think it's kind of a bummer that like to your point, the game can't really get started because there's no point in stacking moments right now because they should be continue to go down and down as more supply comes out. And then also we're talking about this instead of talking about like strategizing or who we think is going to win or how we're going to approach this. Like it doesn't really, none of that really matters until Top Shot figures out how to make sure all the supply, or at least the majority of the supply, gets out there.
Yeah. I mean, the other option, maybe more so to what Borland's thinking, is like they could keep packs open as round one is open, right? And they
Hmm.
just push the redemption window out, right? So, which I think they should have done anyways, right? I think it
Correct.
would have been better if they just they didn't scatter the redemption windows and they just wait until round one is completely over and then all 16 teams are live and people got to figure out what's going on and who they want to redeem and all that stuff. I think that would have been a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
So that's an option. That's an option of how they can keep selling packs with all the teams, without having to repack things and stuff like that and keep it a little bit. Is if the Sixers sweep Saturday, their redemption doesn't open until next Tuesday or whenever the Kings Lakers or Kings Warriors series is over or something.
Yeah, exactly. Boston Base is asking, what are your thoughts on bottlenecks? I think this would probably be, I mean, we kind of talked to
This is a good
nauseum about this.
transition. Yeah.
Yeah, let's transition and talk about what we're actually kind of how we're approaching this. Well, I think both of us are a little bit gun shy in the sense that we're not like going crazy right now, but I am interested to hear what you have to say about how you're approaching this. And I think for the case of argument, let's assume that the majority of the supply is out.
Yeah, so I think because I keep seeing this a lot on Twitter of like people who are saying like, oh, well, maybe the round one moments will end up being the bottleneck and stuff like that. And that could be true if not enough people catch on, but really there's no real reason to not turn your redemptions into a round one moment at the end of round one, right? So there's no real reason to stack a redemption instead of turning it into the moment, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of talked about this a little bit last week. And yeah, obviously, like whichever team actually wins the finals, you still need 3 more redemptions. So, whatever.
Well, you need four
That's
more because you have to have the redemption as well as the 4 moments. So you have to have 5 of each redemption, and then 4 of those redemptions gets turned into the actual moments that you're locking.
right. So let's give an example of, I don't know. Let's pick the Nuggets to get to the finals, right? So if you
Mhm.
are a believer that the Nuggets are going to win the finals, right, and you want to set yourself up now, you buy 5 Jokic's, you buy 5 Murray's, and you buy 5 wild cards, and you say this is all I'm going to need. After round one's over, you should turn in 4 of those Jokic's for 4 round one Jokic's, right? And you should just keep the one redemption for what you'll need for the finals one, but everything else should be turned into a round one moment because those round one moments are the exact same thing as the redemption for the next round, right?
Yeah.
So basically you get 4 shots at some serial lottery, right? Getting lucky with serial lottery, getting lucky with a jersey number, whatever. And then, you know, then those 4 first round moments are now, the same utility as a redemption, right? And so in the case that so there's 2 potential ways it could happen, right? So let's say the Nuggets are a heavy favorite, right? To keep going and to win round two, right? So maybe less people do round one moments because they're like, oh, I'm just going to save them, right? I'm going to save them for longer. Well, now your first round Nuggets moment is out of 900 or something. Let's put it that way, and you've got 4 moments out of 900, and then the Nuggets lose in round two, and all of a sudden everybody's like, "Oh shit! Well, I got to use all these redemptions." So now the second round moment is out of 4,100 or something, right? Like
Mhm.
so that's a win for your first round moment, right? Is your
Yeah.
first round moment has a much less mint count than the second round moment. So then the flip side is the other example where people start saying like, "Oh, the Nuggets are going to win, right? And they're going to keep winning. And let's say they win in round two, and people, now they want to turn in the round two moments because they think they're going to lose in round three or whatever it may be, right? But the I just think out of the gate, people are going to underestimate the round one, and those are going to be relatively low mint counts. And then
Yeah.
people are going to think they need to save them for later, and then all of a sudden the other rounds are going to be, a higher mint if there's some upsets or if people don't play the cards right or whatever. And so that is why I would say every redemption that you have, besides if you think you're going to need it for the Champions Path challenge, should be turned into a round one moment. Then it should be turned into a round two moment. Then it should be turning around three, whatever. So anyways, what are your thoughts on that?
So the one thing I want to say first is isn't the kind of the beauty of this whole like the game theory and stuff behind it is that pretty much no matter how people like play this game, the like final champion moment, which is will be the bottleneck of the set, because since you need 5 redemption moments, like theoretically, like the max that could be is 1,000, and there's no way it gets even close to that. So I think that's one thing I really like about that's one thing I really like about the challenge is one, there's not going to be some weird round one moment that'll be the bottleneck, unless for some reason just no one turns in their like Trey Young redemption moments or something like that. But like
Which can happen. So I would say, the champions challenge. I would say that round one moments. I don't know. I think there's a potential that a round one moment could
could be
be
a
a
weird
bottleneck.
bottleneck. Yeah.
more than like a round 3 moment or something. Like I would put
Yeah,
money
I
on a
agree
round
with that.
1 over like a round 3 or something, just
Mhm.
because I'm not sure people will really understand how it works in round 1, and there could be kind of some weird stuff. But basically, like, okay, let's talk about Trae Young as a good example. So this Trae Young redemption that you have can do everything that a normal Trae Young moment can do on Top Shot, right? You can use
Yeah.
it in a flash challenge. You can burn it. You can use it for player leaderboards, team leaderboards. You know, it has TSS. You can buy it and sell it, whatever. It just doesn't have a video associated with it, right?
Yeah.
If Trae Young doesn't do anything too crazy in round 1 or whatever, right? And he's got a 3-pointer video, you know, now associated with his moment, and people aren't super juiced for it or whatever, technically, if all things being equal, besides one has a video, one doesn't, those Trae Young should have the same mint count, right? 2,500 should be redeemed. 2,500 should be, you know, unredeemed because, you know, all things considered, you probably want a lower mint count of something, right?
Yeah.
You know, typically speaking, right? That's how you're able to finally, you know, sometimes find some value. Now, maybe that's not necessarily the case, but I don't think that Trae Young, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm going to be surprised, but I would assume that the Trae Young mint count is closer to 2,500 than it is to 5,000, right?
Yeah.
Because people are going to be like, okay, well, this redemption's kind of the same shit, and I don't really care about that video exactly, so I might as well take a shot at having a lower mint count, a lower circulating count here. And so
Yeah.
when you kind of go through that example, well, that's kind of how each round should be as well, right? So like, um, and this will be really interesting to see when the pricing starts, right? So let's, you know, again, go back to the Nuggets, right? So the Nuggets redemption window opens. People submit the Nuggets, right? Let's say there's 1,200 Nuggets, right? That means there's 1,200 less Nuggets that are in the redemptions, right? So
Mhm.
technically, probably the price of the redemptions maybe goes up a little bit, and then the price of the Nuggets round 1 moment kind of comes out, and it's like out of 1,200, but it's a round 1 moment. You think they're going to the finals, so maybe a Jokic redemption after the round 1 window is up to like $16 or $17, right? Because people just turn in a bunch to get to round 1. But
Yeah.
then the round 1 Jokic comes out and it's $8. Well, the redemption and the Jokic are the exact same utility for that next round, right? So
Correct.
the pricing should be more level, right? And I'm not saying the round 1 will come up to the redemption or the redemption will come down or whatever, but all things considered, when you go into round 2 and the round 2 window opens and somebody says, "Hey, I really want that round 2 Jokic," they're going to either go buy a redemption and turn it in, or they're going to buy a round 1 and turn it in. So both of those prices should equal out over time, and it won't be like that right out of the gate, right? So that's
Yeah.
going to be an opportunity for people to take, you know, take some spots with some of the inequality that's going to happen with the market. Is people I don't think really will realize that hey, now this round 1 moment is really the same as the redemption for now, right? And then, you know, keep thinking like, you know, you kind of keep going through like the iterations of it. It's like, okay, well, after round two's over, then yes, the round 1 guys lose value quite a bit. But what if the round 1, what if it is 1,200 and then you see that 400 people turned in around 2, or sorry, 400 people turned in a round 1 moment to get to a round 2. Well, now all of a sudden your round 1 is circulating out of 800, and like there's still X amount of redemptions left. The round 2's over 800. Then you're like, oh shit, this Jokic, like this one now might be kind of the bottleneck for the Champions Path
Mhm.
challenge later on, right? Because all of a sudden this guy's out of 800 and there's still, you know, 3,000 redemptions left, and 1,200 you know, are in round 2 now. And then you kind of start playing that math like, okay, well, maybe this round 1 isn't too bad of a deal. I'll kind of hold on to it because it's got some potential to be the bottleneck later. And so that's the fun part, and that's where it's going to be important to kind of keep track of that stuff. You're going to want to keep track of, you know, and we'll have some tools for this, but you're going to want to keep track of where the circulation is at all the different levels, and then where the price points are too, right? Because you're going to be able to kind of thread a needle and find some of those inequalities and be able to kind of capitalize there. And then the bummer part is that, you know, and this is just literally gambling in a nutshell, right? Is like people are gonna get really like invested in this stuff, right? And they're gonna like try to find this and kind of really be all in on a team or a couple teams or whatever. And then like as soon as the Nuggets lose, you're like 800 mid count first round Jokic
Worthless.
doesn't really matter anymore, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not worth this. 800 still decent, but you know, it's not going to be the bottleneck anymore because there's not going to be a challenge needed for it, and so then it loses a bunch of money. So that's going to be the gambling side of things, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. It should be it should be pretty fun if we can get some freaking clarity on the supply and just get that stuff behind us.
Yeah, yeah, and so there's two things I wanna point out. One, I think it'll be interesting if there's a situation where the redemption of a moment is the bottleneck for the challenge. Like, people are turning them in and maybe, like, are getting a little too aggressive or getting a little too excited. Like, maybe let's say the Nuggets are in the Western Conference Finals or even the finals. Let's say the Nuggets win the finals and the finals moment is sick. Like, it's this amazing Jokic moment that everyone wants. And so people overmint that moment with redemptions and round 3 moments.
Yeah.
Suddenly, in order to get that championship, like, real, like the final master challenge, the redemption might actually be the bottleneck. Like, it might make a full circle because like, if we look at the Curry championship moment from last year and the Giannis championship moment, in my opinion, those are
Yeah.
two of the best moments,
Yeah.
and they're some of the more expensive moments in that set, even though the circulation may not reflect it because people want the cool stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where things like to your point, like once the circulation or once the supply issue is like figured out, I think this is going to be the most fun that we've had in Top Shot
Yeah.
for a long time. Like, I think this is so well constructed by Top Shot because it's not going to be some random like
Yeah.
like Bruce Brown or some random like DeAndre Hunter moment that's going to be the bottleneck and kind of take the air out of the set. Like, you are focused on the champion, like the team that's
Yeah.
going to win
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point for sure. And maybe to tie a bow on that of your point and my point together is like more than likely if it's like one of the call it, I don't know, two or three favorites, like I don't even know who you would say is the freaking favorite in the West right now. I mean, I'm sure the sports books probably say Nuggets or Suns still.
yeah,
But
I would guess.
I mean, I don't know. The West seems pretty wide open. And then the East, you've got Bucks and Bucks and
Celtics.
Celtics, right? So if you just go by like the prices right now, let's say it's one of those four teams, Bucks, Celtics, Nuggets, Suns. I think the odds of uh earlier, maybe like a first round moment being the bottleneck are a little bit higher because for those four teams, people are probably going to be of their mindset, I want to hold my redemptions because I think they're going to keep going, right? And then we
Yeah.
could get that some of that action like a first round moment it becomes it. But then on the flip side, and I'll just pick the Kings here because if they beat the Warriors, they'll be a dog in every series they go into, probably. People are gonna just, at every round that they win, they're probably gonna like over redeem for them, right? So they're probably
Mm,
gonna like if they beat the Warriors and then they face the Grizzlies or the Lakers, the Kings are probably gonna be an underdog. And so
yeah,
and
they
people
definitely
won't
will be.
think that they're gonna beat the Lakers or the Grizzlies. So then they're just gonna be like, okay, I'll mint this first round moment. There's some cool shit that went on in that series and I know they're going to fizzle out next round. And the Kings win again, and then either people flip the first, but then we could get to that point where oh shit, the Kings are in the finals and they only have 600 redemptions left or whatever, right? And so at that point, people are doing stuff with the third round moment or something, and then the redemption is kind of the pinch point for that final challenge if they were to win it all. So yeah, I think that's kind of the two angles there. Boston Bay said, if you have 15 Jason Tatum redemptions, hypothetically, what would you
Hypothetically.
do with them? uh, I mean, by now you're probably pretty all in on the Celtics. Obviously stack at 15 of them. They're obviously going to sweep, so I feel like your Jason Tatum bags are pretty well insulated there. He's at $22. He's fallen off a little bit over the last few days. I think he was up at 26, 27. Now he's down to 22. Obviously, if they come out he's got 2,500 that are still in packs. So if they dump out, half of the supply, it's going to take a little bit of a hit. But I think I would, at this point, I mean, you're already committed. I would just probably just hold on to them and hope that Top Shot doesn't screw you too much with a supply dump, and then just kind of play the game that we're talking about. But you know, like we talked about earlier, I don't really think like I don't think there's a whole lot of reason to not turn those Jason Tatum redemptions into first round moments, because then you're just basically giving yourself another option to like continue kind of playing that like flip it game, which you could always do with redemptions. But then you get another round of serial, you get 14 shots at serial luck and stuff like that.
That's a good
With the
point too.
Tatum first round moment. So I mean, people kind of care about that stuff. So that's what I would do. I mean, maybe in your case, 15 is like quite a bit more than you would actually ever need. So I don't know, maybe turn 8 of them into first round moments. Maybe look to kind of play a sell game if the redemption spikes at some point for some reason because things get out of whack, and you can sell some redemptions for a profit, and then keep one for when they win the finals.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, and that like what you're saying kind of lines up with what I was gonna say. I was gonna say turn 10 into round one moments and keep five. Because I think it gives you enough juice to like you can even do two every cycle. So you have two round one. Like let's say that Boston
Yeah.
wins it all. You got two of everything. So you can even sell as people are trying to buy in to complete the challenge. You can sell at any point where those like whichever one becomes the bottleneck or the most expensive that people are buying in order to complete that challenge. Let's say the finals moment is like just super sick and you want a couple of those, you have a couple extra redemptions to just get some of those for personal. Or if that whole full circle thing happens and the redemption becomes the bottleneck, now you got four extra redemptions that you can sell for a fat profit. So
Yeah.
I I
And
think
like
yeah,
your like his comment here saying, I'm debating how many unredeemed ones to hold back for the champion real market boost. Like honestly, the Celtics are probably one of the main contenders, I would say, where their redemption may not be the one that gets the squeeze during that final challenge, right? And
yeah,
again, this is like taking into kind of a lot of different assumptions about how quickly people are going to catch on to things, and maybe things level out in round 3 before the finals start or whatever. But if people think the Celtics are going into the finals as the favorite, like the initial reaction is hold on to redemptions, don't mint this round 3 moment because I want to get that finals moment or something, right? And so then in that case, like maybe all of a sudden you're going in with like there's 1,200 redemptions going into the finals, and the round 3 was only minted to 800 or something, right? And so then all of a sudden the round 3 moment is going to be the one that's the bottleneck or whatever. And so yeah, I think that's kind of the interesting part, and like that's where these things going off at different times is really going to kind of screw, or really going to take people to be kind of engaged a little bit, is because like, okay, let me keep track of like what just happened with the Celtics redemption. Let me compare that to like the Bucks, whatever, all that shit. And like, okay, Bucks are looking like a little bit, maybe that's a good spot to buy some Bucks. Maybe I'm going to buy some Celtics round 2 because those came in under minted, stuff like that. Really what should happen is every round, like if this was a perfect world, every round the number of redemptions and the number of moments in that round would equal each other, right? So like
correct.
the first round it'd be like 2,500, 2,500, right? And then the second round it'd be like, total combined it'd be like 2,000, 2,000, or I don't know, now I'm losing track of whatever 5,000 is divided by 3. And then the next round it would be everything would be about 5,000 divided by 4, and in the finals everything would be 5,000 divided by 5, 1,000, right? But we know that's not going to happen, right? And so in the case I just brought up with Boston base, like let's say, yeah, Celtics have 1,500 redemptions going in, and the round, or I don't know, whatever. Let's say they have 1,800 redemptions going in to the round 3 window, right? And people swing some round 2s over. They start redeeming some redemptions, and there's 6 hours left in the counter, and there's still 1,200 redemptions, and there's only 600 round 3 moments. Well, then the play is to like if you don't want to have redemptions at that point. You would rather have round 3 moments, right? So technically a play would be to like high redemptions and just keep redeeming for round 3, right? And then at a point when the round 3 gets equal to or level with the redemptions, well then you want to have the redemptions again, right? So it's going to be this thing where there's going to be some trailing reactions that happen, and there's going to be some kind of crazy market movement that happens. And so I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to stock up on some of these teams that you think are going to go far. But obviously, we got to get over the supply hurdle a little bit before I would be comfortable doing it. But if you got 15, fire away, baby.
Yeah. I know. I plan to build a couple stacks, but to your point, I'm waiting until we get some information about the unsold packs, and supply is still continuing to leak out on top of that. Quick question for you, and then I think we can tie a bow on this. I have one little. Let's say the Boston Celtics make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and they lose. Um, does that mean, would you, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe you could still redeem redemptions for a moment from that round, even though they lost, correct?
Yeah,
Because,
yeah.
yeah, just like
Every round,
how.
every team. If you played in that round, you get 3 moments, basically.
Exactly. Okay. So, what would you do in the case that you have, let's say, even just like a stack of like 4 redemption moments for a Tatum, and they lose in the Eastern Conference Finals? How do you approach that situation?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be kind of mint count based, right? And so, like I don't think the reaction to that is much different than the example we brought up from Trey Young, right? Where let's
Mhm.
say going into the round 3 window opening, there's 2,000 Tatum's redemptions available, right? And probably the round 2 moment is under minted, right? Is less than that. So there's not a whole lot of incentive for the round 2 guys to turn it into round 3. So the round 2 is probably going to stay what it is, and then the redemption moments are going to kind of turn over into, the round 3. That's most of the stock's going to come from redemption, right? Because the round 2 guys are going to be like, "Hey, my Tatum's out of 1,200. Why would I turn it into one that might be out of 2,000 now that they lost, right?" And
Yeah.
so they're going to hold on to it, and then their redemptions are going to start going. But then you kind of get to the same question: is like do people care about these low circulation redemptions, right? Like, will 2,000 people or 1,800 people turn in and just say, "I'll just take my round 3 Tatum and be done with it," right? And so then you've got like a 1,000 round 1, you've got a 1,200 round 2, an 1,800 round 3, and then a 200 redemption or something, right? Is that going to happen? Or at some point, are people going to be like, "Wait a minute, I think I'd rather just hold on to this redemption that's now out of 400 or something instead of getting myself a 1,600 Tatum or whatever," right? Like, so like that kind of, I think that kind of conversation is what's going to happen. It'll be interesting to see if people care about it. Because yeah, like, I mean, they've pretty explicitly said like, we're not going to do we're not going to do a challenge where it says, "Hey, you need X amount of redemptions in your collection to get something else," right? They're not going to like specifically call for redemptions ever to be used, but somebody said earlier 200 people already own the full redemption set, right? So people obviously think it's collectible. And then on top of that, like, people the they aren't, while they're not going to be specifically called for in challenges, they are going to be something that can be used, right? So I mean, shit, having a 400 out of 400 circulating question mark of Tatum may appeal you to more than having a 1,600 playoff moment that probably kind of gets lost in the sauce if they lose in round 3.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, kind of to your point, we saw that like I think someone put in the chat that like 200 people already have the full redemption set.
Right, right.
So, and I mean, personally, I'm not trying to collect the redemption set, but I do think like it just adds another layer to this very like exciting like situation where like the game theory can be like even like no matter like if you have a redemption moment, like you still have to make a decision even if that team loses type of deal,
Right.
which
Yeah.
I think which is great. Like maybe it like we all think that it'll lose value for like if like for example, if the Nuggets get upset, there are probably a lot of people that are just trying to sell out instead of keep that. But it still forces you to make a decision as opposed to previous iterations we've had of NBA Top Shot with the playoffs. So I think it's pretty cool.
Agreed. So Bucks are kicking ass. Grizzlies got the win.
That's huge.
Yeah, Bucks are freaking 26 at halftime.
Up by 26?
He scored 81 in the first half without Giannis.
Oh my god!
What's going on?
I see Ryan saying that. Yeah. Well, we know the Heat are the worst, the lowest scoring team in the NBA, so they're gonna have trouble catching up to that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's bonkers. Well, that's good because I would love for the Bucks to make a run more than anything.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we're right at an hour. I feel like we had a really great conversation about the champions path, and I don't think we even needed Zakarian for it. So
yeah, we didn't need him at all. I think that was pretty good. I think it's good to keep it at a tight hour, and like we've spent the last 15 minutes kind of like speculating on all these potential things that could happen, but I feel like by this time next week we'll have a couple live challenges, hopefully, or redemption windows or whatever we're calling them, and so we'll be able to kind of flesh out a little bit more, like what are people doing, right? What is the public doing? How are people responding to these? And if there's been any, price movement accordingly and stuff like that. So I think that will help give us a lot more to talk about next week when we're able to kind of break down some of this stuff live for sure.
Yeah, no, I think next week is going to be really exciting. Just because, to your point, we'll have all the supply stuff hopefully out of the way. We'll see some challenges and stuff, so we'll really get to dive in, and it won't be just purely theoretical. So
people are asking for strike. Give them some strike.
All right. Well, yeah. Real quick, do you have anything to plug, John, before we close this off today?
No, we've got filter up for the Champions Path on Momentum Labs. That's got a current count of circulation and price and all that stuff. Kind of get it all on one screen, and then we'll be building out once we get some clarity on what's going on with supply. We'll be building out a tool that kind of helps track everything that we just talked about tonight, right? Like where all the different circulations are, where all the different price points are, like kind of what is the right thing to do at each point, right? What should you do with this moment? And so that's kind of the next phase here that we'll be building out probably towards next week. So yeah, come check it out on Momentum Labs. And I'm obviously causing some chaos on Twitter, trying to get people riled up about this stuff and get some answers. So probably keep posting in the soapbox and keep posting on Twitter, trying to get some resolution here for what they're doing. So that's the plan.
Hell yeah. And then real quick before I go into strike, I do want to. I see PPE in the chat, bringing up the Draymond stuff, and we kind of already talked about it. But I did want to share this tweet just because on the drive home, I was driving as quick as I could to make sure I made it in time. I was listening to Bill Simmons, and he was talking about kind of the same thing that Mike was talking about, where he's like, there just has never been a precedence where a suspension references to past transgressions. And I was just like, I'm so surprised that people think that. Like, I mean, I don't think Bill Simmons will see my tweet, but I'd love for him to see it just because I pulled a quote from David Stern at the time where he basically says, like, we suspended Meta World Peace for 6 playoff games. 6, not 1. 6 playoff games. That's basically a whole series.
Yeah.
And they did it because of his history of on-court altercations. So, if you're watching this and you want to go drop a like, maybe reply tagging Bill Simmons, that would be appreciated because it is bonkers to me. It's bonkers to me that anyone can watch that clip and have any sort of like conclusion except like, oh yeah, like maybe you shouldn't be curb stomping a guy who grabbed your leg. And yeah,
I mean,
Absolutely.
here's my take on the Draymond. The people want some Draymond. I was going off on it a little bit that night. So my take is like, uh, yes, Sabonis like grabbed his leg, right? Like, yes, that wasn't like clean or whatever. Like, people can argue about Sabonis for that too. But like
Yeah.
Sabonis grabbing his leg doesn't like mean that Draymond should like stomp and like jump off of Sabonis, right? Like Sabonis got his like I forget if it was a technical or a flagrant one or whatever.
You got a tech, I
Draymond
think.
got his he got a tech, right? Draymond got a flagrant two, kicked out. Then he was, fired up the crowd and going at everybody and so I feel like that played it a little bit to the suspension because it's
Yeah.
not the greatest look there. But um so I don't know. I feel like that part like shouldn't really like people would be like, well, what is he supposed to do when he gets his leg grabbed? It's like, yeah, Sabonis grabbed his leg, but also like that doesn't mean that you should stomp and like jump off of him. Like
Well,
I'm not a professional basketball player, but like if I got my leg grabbed and I like needed to step somewhere, like maybe I like step on a guy and then I like fall to the ground or something because I'm like, oh shit, I just stepped on that dude. I'm not like stepping on his chest and then like boinging
bouncing
off of
off.
it, being like, all right, here we go, fuck that guy. So like I don't know. I feel like
I think
that line is a little bit blurry to me.
literally the best part of this whole thing was people were throwing up like compilations of Draymond Green grabbing people's legs. Not even
Yeah, yeah,
other
yeah.
players
I know.
grabbing people's legs, like
I
Draymond
know.
grabbing people's legs, including a
And
time where
grabbed Gordon's leg and Aaron Gordon's leg in the playoffs last year or something.
he grabbed Anthony Davis's leg and basically did like a crocodile death roll on it. And
Yeah, yeah.
Anthony Davis never even kicked him, much less like jumped off of him. So it is, yeah, and yeah, it's hilarious that this a guy who has such a track record of doing so many dirty plays that we never see anyone else have. Like, no one else has ever stepped on someone, no one else has ever kicked someone in the nuts. Like, seems to only be Draymond, but of course it's always an accident with him. So
My favorite part was the post-game interview with Sabonis where, I forget if it was Malik Andrews or who it was that was interviewing him, but, they're basically trying to, get his thoughts on it, like what happened with Draymond or whatever. And I just love that he, like, kind of didn't even really, like, react to it. He wasn't like, "Oh, yeah, that sucked," or, "Oh, yeah, my chest hurts," or, like, literally anything. He didn't say anything. He just said, like, I mean, it's playoff basketball. He's like, look at these fans. They want playoff basketball. Like we love play. Like basically, just like if you guys want to play physical, we could play physical too. Like let's go. Like he didn't like take the route of like, oh yeah, that was a shady player. Oh, I think he's a dirty player. Oh, my ribs hurt or oh whatever. Like he just totally like glossed over it and said, let's play ball. It's playoff time. And I thought that was the best part because that's like I didn't want it to go that route where it's like everybody's talking about Draymond and the Kings are tripping out and stuff like that. It's like no, he did what he did. It was an interesting little incident, but like we're gonna keep playing ball here, and we're gonna keep going into the playoffs here. So I think I mean obviously the game is it tomorrow night? I think it is
yeah,
tomorrow
yeah,
night, right? Thursday.
yeah.
Yeah, tomorrow night's game is gonna be awesome.
Bonkers. Yeah, I think there's going to be some players on a bit of a shorter leash because they do not want something like that to happen again. But I think to your point, it kind of just summarizes that, at least in my opinion, that the Kings have the right mentality for this series and the Warriors do not.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
seeing the Warriors players and media and everyone complain, like it's just like, dude. And Bob Myers, I think he said it best, where he's like, "Hey, like it's already decided. Like it's time for us to get ready for the next
yeah,
game."
yeah. That was good. Yeah,
And I feel like the Kings, like immediately after game two, are like, "All right, let's lock in for game three. We're not entertaining this or anything. Like we're here to win a series." And I mean, I picked the Kings in seven. I still think it could go seven. I still think the Kings will win. But yeah, it's what a wild thing. And the last thing I'll say is and you kind of touched on it, but it is so ridiculous for Draymond of all people, especially when he's played victim about people like yelling stuff at him, and I believe he's kicked like fans out of games, that he
yeah,
could turn around and like basically incite a riot to some degree, where it's like, dude, like the NBA is trying to avoid another Malice in the Palace at all costs. And
yeah,
thankfully,
yeah,
none of that happened, because that would have just really even taken more away from what has been two great basketball games. But it's just like, dude, like I don't think he gets suspended if he just sits down, lets the ref make the decision, and gets out of
Yeah.
there. But he
I
has to
was
throw a temper tantrum every time.
I know. I was very proud of my Sacramento homies in the crowd there that were just like they were just going just full like double bird like the whole time, and like nobody threw shit or like nobody threw shit at the tunnel.
Yeah.
Like that's not a story. Like I'm very happy for that, right? So it's like just throw up the double bird and just flip them off the whole way into the tunnel. That works for me.
Yeah.
All
The
right, real
fact
quick
that
before we get into oh sorry.
UFC.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say the fact that it didn't escalate is like a huge
Yeah.
relief.
So before we jump into UFC, I'm going to give the people in the chat some time to react to this. I'm keeping a list of moments that I think need to be minted or maybe should be minted or whatever. Just trying to keep track of what is actually memorable about these playoffs. So I'm going to fire up the list here. I've got it on my iPhone notes, so sorry I can't bring it up on the screen. But as Jeb's doing his UFC minute, feel free to toss some other plays or moments in the chat that you think I may have missed. So far I've got of the locked in moment. The only locked in moment I think we have so far is the Westbrook block from game one that kind of sealed that game a little bit in the fourth quarter. Then
Yeah.
I think we've got a couple potentials that could make it if there's nothing better. Either Fox or Monk in the fourth quarter of game one, where they just kind of both went off. Ton of drives, ton of layups, stuff like that. I think that is something maybe of Milt. I think Reeves going off in game one, having a pretty big
The I'm him
third and fourth
moment.
quarter. The I'm him. I think that could be a potential. Cam Johnson dunk on Embiid in game two was a
Yeah.
pretty big one, pretty impactful dunk. I put down last night Kawhi. He had a pretty good like classic claw like snag of
KD.
KD, and then he steal and dunk at the other end. I felt like that was a pretty classic Kawhi moment. And then the fan favorites, people are bringing up the Paul Reed through the legs little hezzy that he did in game one. And then I've got the UFC strike moment as the Draymond stomp. So that's what I have now for people in the chat. Missed most of the games tonight. So if you've seen other moments or I should add to the list, let me know now, and we'll flip it over to Jeb on UFC corner.
Real quick, I just want to highlight this because this is crazy.
Mhm.
John apparently was at the Malice in the Palace at age 10, which holy cow, John. I'd
That's
love to
awesome.
hear more about that. That had to be quite an experience.
That
Holy
is awesome.
cow. The one thing I want to say, John, I think one that could be on the potential is that Embiid block on Bridges was pretty emphatic. And he had a really good game, so that could be it. But yeah, I'll say that. And then Poker Pro Eric saying, well, dude, John, that ticket stub's gonna be worth something someday if
Yeah,
it's
that
not
probably
already.
is worth something.
Yeah, so hold on to that thing.
Darren Ravel would probably say that's worth something. Big
Well,
ticket gun.
yeah. All right. So let's talk about UFC Strike super quick, and then we'll close it out. So, one, there was a little confusion today that UFC Strike was not owned by Dapper Sports and that had been like sold off or given to the company that Rob is a part of, who's the GM of UFC Strike. Turns out that is not true. The difference is that apparently UFC Strike spin does not count towards VIP like net spend for some reason, which I think is a little, I don't completely understand that, but I think part of it is because just the UFC strike has kind of been doing their own thing, which I mean, I think is for the better. They kind of have their own, they have their own like set of VIPs. They have their own like special utility and champions club for the champion moments, all that stuff. So maybe that's why, is because they're already doing so much that they don't feel like Dapper Sports doesn't feel like those people also should get to double dip and get VIP privileges as well when they're already getting like free tickets to UFC events and getting to go to the Champions Lounge and getting these airdrops and getting merch and all this other stuff. So I think that's maybe the reason why, but ultimately it's speculating. It's kind of hard for us to know. But I do think that UFC Strike is really getting really exciting. They're continuing to just cruise with what they got. I actually just bought my first champion moment uh, partly because I plan to be going to UFC 290, and there's going to be a Champions Lounge there. So I'm ecstatic. I never thought I would be dropping, even in Top Shot. I never really felt like I was going to be dropping money on a legendary moment. So the fact that I think that UFC Strike swayed me with all the like actual like practical utility speaks a lot, because I'm someone who's like, if you've seen me on SoRare or on Top Shot, I've always been someone who's buying up floors. I'm not going and buying like the super